lot of good, fun, interesting hands that came out over the last few days. There's been a couple of final tables. In my last 3 sessions playing tournaments, I have final tabled 3 times, and that's always a good result. Really think that break helped me. So we'll go over yesterday's hands first, and then we'll go back to, what was it, like 3 or 4 days ago. So let's see here. Let me turn this down so I don't distract myself. Alright, this is early in the tournaments. They're in chronological order, so as we go on, we'll see how it goes. Queen 10 out of the big blind. We defend. This is one of those ones where you kind of look for an opportunity because this really doesn't affect the raiser's range, meaning he shouldn't have anything that helps here. The caller kind of as well. You got to remember, if these players had really good hands or interesting things like that, there would have been a raise over here. So in this one, this is the candidate where I'm the most likely to have improved on this board. And when you can make bets that make people think that what they're seeing is what you have, you can look for those opportunities. So this is a good one to check. A villain doesn't even like the c-bet, which I think for a vast majority is a mistake, because this is not good for his range. But when he checks, he's kind of just giving this one up, because if this was heads up, I could see checking, but I think if the villain bets out just 3 blinds here, like 3, 3 1/4, he's going to get more folds than he believes. And when no one improves and you have ace king, ace queen, ace jack, these hands are best, so you can bet them. And it goes check around. Turn is a 6 on the turn's a 6. I decide to go ahead and lead the turn. It looks kind of obvious, but it's supposed to look that way. Like if I had a 4, would I really do this? Probably, if I wasn't the most sophisticated player, but it doesn't really matter. Everybody folds, because you can't expect somebody to bet the 4. And anytime there's a flush draw out there, there's a psychology to I better bet or somebody might outdraw me, that a lot of these players at lower limits kind of keep in their head, and they, so it makes sense that I would bet the 4. So let's go on to the next one. Over-explain that one, but I think it's important. Oh, wait a minute, hang on. I don't want to show the known hole cards. So we're very early in this tournament. This is, I believe, the bounty tournament that we went pretty deep in yesterday. Get a raise, goes around, goes check. I decide to bet. I am the most likely person to have an overpair because of my position. This is my biggest issue. This player is the most likely to... Hang on one second. Why y'all phone so loud? Yeah, hush. Sorry, had to shut the door. Courtney's phone is on loud. And so I think betting here is reasonable. Really, the only thing I'm worried about is this player having a jack that he wants to protect, but once he folds, it goes back to the small blind. Now, remember, this player didn't 3-bet. He could have some jacks for sure, but typically, I think a jack would check raise here, trying to figure out where it's at and trying to protect its hand, because this is a wide open draw board. If I have ace king, ace queen, king queen, all those hands, you would kind of want to protect your hand here. So he calls. I decide to go ahead and bet the turn, and this is a reasonable value bet. I felt like this is one of those situations where you either find out right now that you're just crushed, or you get the answer to your question. The river comes off after he calls me. It's a deuce, and I remember talking this one out on stream and saying, this is one of those ones where it's a draw. There's just no real... there's no real hands that he can have that would call the flop and call the turn and call the river that I can beat. So now if somebody has a 10, are they going to call 3 streets? You wouldn't think so, but honestly, yeah. Because when a player is in that position, they're if they had something like 10-9 or 10-queen or something like that, they're basically saying, I'm looking for a second pair. When he calls on the turn after the 4 comes off, he's not calling to try and hit a 10. He's basically calling saying, I think my 10 might be best. in that scenario. If he had a jack, he would have raised at some point. Obviously, a 4 is a big trap. So when he checks, I don't see any reason to bet. And I said this at the time that I hate missing value, but I just don't think anything's going to call us, and he's just more likely to have a draw than anything. And what's the point in betting? Very rarely I'm going to be beat here, but I don't want to throw money away. So I just decided to check it, and he checks back, and sure enough, there's the king-queen, which is probably the best case scenario, and I like how much value I got out of this one. It was very well thought out, and I'm going to make a video out of the clip because it was a pretty well thought out situation that I executed perfectly, I thought. A lot of players use that excuse of, well, what can call me on the river here, so I'm not going to bet. It's usually a puss out. This is the rare situation where you can say that because your hand is so weak, it's strong enough to bet twice but not 3 times. You want to get your value before the river comes off because you're not going to get paid on the river, so you have to go flop and turn, and reasonably. And we made, 18 blinds on that pot. It was nice. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. King, queen. Now we got my king, queen. There we go. So player raises an early position. I decided to just call. This is one of those ones where it could be 3-bet, but we are super early, and this player is kind of short. This is a bounty tournament. I believe this is the bounty tournament. Let me see here. Yeah, this is the bounty tournament. So the way I've been doing well in these is by not forcing actions pre-flop. So there's a little bit less 3-betting early on. By just calling this player and improving, we can get him to bust himself. This is usually the idea. Flop comes off, top pair in the open ender, pretty good. Now, there's a chance the guy can have king-queen, but you can't just see monsters under the bed. It goes check-check, and yeah, that is the scenario when somebody has ace-king, but it's also the scenario when somebody has a draw that they want to draw to. And if somebody has ace-king, I'm going to find out anyway. And in all honesty, I can probably take the worst of it here if this player jams, because he's going to have a lot more flush draws, he's going to have a lot more overpairs, I'm going to have the open-enders against him. And I think it's just better to let this player get the fuck out of my way. So I just bet half pot for value, and they both fold. And it's a simple little pot, but it shows that, I think a lot of players check this thinking, well, I can hit my draw, this and the other. You kill your action. And in bounty tournaments, if this player were to check jam, I'm pretty much calling every time, because except for the very specific situation where he has ace-king, which, again, far less likely because I have king-queen, I'm going to have a lot of live outs against him plus a bounty on the table. So just a small note. Get raised from the small blind. Could have 3-bet, but again, it's pretty deep. I decided I don't want to. This isn't the bounty tournament. This is a different one. So we just call ace-king 7. Player bets super small. And here's the thing. Playing from the small blind is kind of been my... It was my blind spot, now it's kind of my over focus, because I know for a fact everybody loses more from the small blind position than any other position on the table. It's just the way it is. It is the worst position on the table. If you think you're winning from the small blind, you are actually incorrect. The best players in the world lose from the small blind at a full ring table. That's all there is to it. Everybody loses. The difference is to decrease the amount you lose versus the rest of the field. So if I only lose 10 big blinds, in a situation on average, and everybody else loses 20, I'm crushing. You got to look at it that way. So the player raised too small pre-flop to really define his hand. You raised pre-flop should have been to 3, 3.5. I like 3.5. And then he bets super small on the flop. These are just indicators of I don't want to call pre-flop and I want to find out where I'm at on the flop. Well, my hand should be better in all those situations, so honestly, I think just calling here is fine. When the ace comes off on the turn, it puts a very clear picture in my head that I am best. He checks, I decide to go ahead and bet, and in this particular situation, he folded, but I think this was the best avenue to make the most money, and I didn't extend risk, because until he checks the turn, it's very hard to know exactly what's going on, but he will call with a 7 here. He will call with a draw here. I don't think he's checking a king because it's super unlikely I have an ace. And king jack, king 10, king queen, all those hands should be betting here. So when he checks, I think betting is fine just because there are hero implications of 6-7 or flush draws. And I think so if the pot dies here, there just wasn't any more money to be made. But I like this play. It's very simple, it's very small, and I didn't extend my risk too much. And there is a scenario in which he has like pocket tens, where he saw this flop and then he was like, ugh. So he bet and he's like, well, now I'm done with it. You know what I'm saying? Once I called. So there is that scenario out there. Ace-7 of hearts. This is a fun hand. Oh no, different ace-7, sorry. So I make a raise, gets called. I decide to go ahead and bet small. I get called. Turn comes off with the hearts. I decide to bet bigger. I'm going bet here. My general feeling is that this player doesn't have a king. If he had a king, he would have put me in on the flop. I only had about 17 blinds left. This is a scenario to do that. He just calls 3 on the river, and this is the best jam of the tournament. This is one where I think I sucked out by not sucking out. I think a lot of times in this situation, this player has king 10. Just by the way the timing went and stuff like that. So he gets counterfeited on the river by 3s. If I have a king, I just beat him if he has queen 10. I really think that's what happened. Or he had maybe queen jack or something. Because I think 10 jack is a snap fold. But he definitely didn't fold a king. I think he absolutely had a queen in his hand. And I think this is one where bet was done perfectly because I'm pretty short. Like, I can't bet too crazy on this turn because I have to save something for the river. So I bet, 5.4 because 12 big blinds in the river, it's still half his stack. Like, you see the geometry of this? We start out so differently stacked, but I start out with a super small bet. Now the pot gets to, about 9.8 big blinds. Betting the turn like this, and I remember counting this out on stream, I said I'll have about half his stack left. Now I cut him in half if he's wrong when he calls. So it actually has a lot of value to jamming here, and he does fold. I really like this hand. I like the way it was thought out. 9-10 off. We defend the big blind, come out with a pretty much nothing flop. I check. Player bets super micro. Here's the thing about this. Paired boards are great for the raiser. And coming out of first position, he should be uber duper strong. But he should be betting more than this. This is just not enough. Quarter pot is not enough. You have to be somewhere closer to 30%. It's I don't know why, but it just sets off alarm bells for me. So I float it. We check the turn. He checks back. The river comes off pretty safe. And I just bet 2/3 pot, and I should have it all here. He folds. And this is one of those ones where I'm in the blind, so I can have anything. He's in first position, and he can't have everything. Now, if he had bet the flop bigger, I might be under the impression that he had an overpair, which is very likely. He's in first position. He could have a pair, 8s plus. So when he bets the flop correctly. But I think he just had something like ace-jack, ace-queen. I don't even think it was ace-king. So, and when we let the river come off and then we bet into him, it's way too strong. And meanwhile, he's one of the big stacks at the table, and I just took this one off of him, and it was a really nice pickup there. 10-7 suited. This is a fun one. I remember this one. We see a huge raise pre-flop, and I have 27 blinds. We're all about the same, right? So I decided to go ahead and call. There's a check here. I check. Player now bets 1/3 pot. It's pretty solid. Of course, I'm going to call because I'm not going to fold for one bet with top pair. Bang. 7 on the turn is pretty good. Now, it's interesting because you have to think about what draws got there. 9-6, queen 9. Could 9-6 be there? Sure. But it would have to call that big bet from the small blind pre-flop. It's kind of weird. Now this player leads out. And I've been finding on the turn when players are leading out, they're trying to control the size of the pot for the river to draw. There are now 2 spade draws and all these straight draws out there. I think a lot of times what we're going to see here from this player is something like the, 8-9 or like 9 ace of spades, maybe the 9 king of hearts, something in that kind of area where he's got like a combo draw. But he's controlling the pot, and this also tells me he's not nutted and he doesn't want to get any more money in until he makes his hand. So we do this and raise. all in, and you see I cover this player. I'm convinced this player has an overpair when he calls, and I'm convinced this player folds 100% of the time. And I said that in game. This player took a super long time, called it. I actually called his hand in game, and this player now folds. This bet tells me he doesn't want to put any more money in until he makes his hand. This is where you can use your pressure, because I'm in the blind too. I could also have 6-9. I could also have 9-Jack. You know what I'm saying? I could just have him drawing dead to a flush, and if he doesn't have a flush draw, he can't call. If he has some kind of combo draw here, should he call? Yeah. Should he fold a 9 without a backdoor, without a flush draw? Yeah. He really can't call because he might just be calling for a chop, and he might not get a chop on the 6. He might only get it on the Jack. I could just have him crushed. And sure enough, this player calls, and I win. And look at that card on the river. How danger zone is that for my hand? And so this was a really well-played hand, and this vaulted me into a great position in this tournament that ended up going to the final table. Let's see here. Pocket 7s. Let's see here. Min raise and called. King, king, deuce. Check, check. I decided to check it behind because that's what I would do with a king, right? Player bets a quarter pot. Again, bet is too small. I decided to raise it. This is one of those ones that I think players make the mistake where they go, well, he doesn't have a king, so they call. You have to continue the thought. He doesn't have a king. I think I have him beat right now, but by this much. There's a lot of cards. If any card 8 or higher comes out, I don't like my hand anymore. So raising is the move. I want to convince him I'm stronger than I am. Fold. So this was really just a protection raise, but I think it's very important to recognize that. And my hand just looks like a king. Like, you could do this with pretty much anything, but in truth, I was protecting my 7s. But you could really do this with any hand. It truly doesn't matter. Ace-7. Oh, is this the big one? Yeah, this is a fun one. This is my favorite hand of yesterday, I think. It was really good. So we see a big raise out of first. Now, we are all super deep, but there are, or we're not all super deep, but there's a few deep stacks in here. But all these stacks are rejam stacks, so this player is adjusting the size of his raise. He was going min raises, but now he's in first position betting super big. To me, this is a good hand, but not aces, kings, queens. You know what I'm saying? So I just kind of put him on a good ace and decided, my suited ace is good enough, and I have a shit ton of chips, so why not? It folds all the way around to the blind who calls, and I flop top 2 pair, and it goes check, check. I decide to bet. I am betting super small here. This is a goat raise. This is that quarter pot bet that I told you I don't really like. I'm doing this for the purposes of getting check raised. This is to entice my opponents right here and now. He raises to 7 1/4, so he 3x's my bet essentially. And at this point, you can go about this a lot of ways, but let's say that my read is right? Let's say he has an ace. Very unlikely he has pocket aces, especially the way he bet it pre-flop. So if he has ace, king, ace, queen, what's the best way to get him to call? If I re-raise to like 20 blinds, is he going to call it? Probably. But he may think that I have a set. So I'm trying to make my hand look as weak as possible. That I'm trying to kill the pot right now, when in essence, there's really no hand he can have that beats me. He really can't have pocket aces, because of his pre-flop action, honestly. But let's give him pocket aces, because he did raise it. Maybe he just got excited. Other than that one hand, there's really no hand that he can have. Oh, that is really loud. I'm sorry. There's really no hand that he can have that beats me. But how do I make it look weaker than a set? And this is what I came up with. And I did this almost instantly. I jammed all in for his 66 blinds effective behind. And I remember when I did this, it was definitely a head turner. And after the first 3 seconds, I said, this is how you get called by ace-king. This is going to work. Trust me, this is it. And player does call. My 7 on the turn is nice because I locked it out. But remember, we had to get it in on the flop. and my man was just drawn to 3 outs. There wasn't even an overcard. There wasn't even a 9 here, so it couldn't even come off like 9 to make 2 pair. So it was 3 outs for his tournament life, and this gave me the chip lead of the tournament. Pretty nice play. I really like the way I thunked this one out, because after he raises, this flop should be so good for him, it's disgusting. Then he just checks it, goading the check raise, and then overplaying it makes it look like I have like ace-queen or even ace-king. But he's sitting there thinking he would never do that with a set. You're right. But if I knew you had ace-king, what would be the best way to get the money in? This is it. And that was a million chip pot. Pretty crazy. This player jams. I decided to rejam the 5s. This is just a funny one. This player was super short with a big bounty. I ran into it in the big blind. Wait a minute. Oh, sorry. Not show HUD. Always show whole cards. Well, whatever. And I river to 5. So this is just a fun one. But in all honesty, and it's great because this guy also hit queens. So this one's just a highlight reel hand. But this player only jammed for 15 blinds, and I think it's important to remember that I can't call here, and I really can't fold, especially with all these stacks behind being jam stacks. So if I'm gonna, fold the hand, that's fine. But if I'm gonna play it, I have to rejam. So this is just one where the poker gods smiled on me, and I rivered a 2-outer versus everybody. So just a fun one. No real strategy there. This is a nice hand. We're getting deeper. I want to say this is on the final table. Yeah. So this is the final table I made last night. It's not the bounty tournament. This is an interesting one. So we see a raise out of first. I do decide to defend. It's awkward, but this player I've been able to lean on, and look at the size of this stack. So 2/3 of the chips are out of the tournament in this player's hand right now. I decide to go ahead and defend. Flop comes off 10-6-4, nothing really great. It goes check, check. I make a 9 on the turn. I decide to check it. This player bets super small. Again, this is that overly weak sizing. I decide to call. I decide to check it, and he bets 2/3 pot. Remember, this is at the final table, and nobody's gone out yet. And if I lose this, it hurts me bad because it kind of knocks me down, and I'm kind of tied with this player. But if I win it, it's really good. But his structure didn't really make sense. He's trying to rep a queen now, but what were you repping on the turn? You know what I mean? Like, what's the deal here? Are you trying to represent a flush draw on the turn that you made now? Are you trying to represent some kind of draw that now hit a pair? You raised out a first, though, at a full table at the final table. I don't buy it, so I did end up making the call, and player just has ace-jack. He could have just bet this flop. Like, we're on the final table, and you're in position on the blind. If he bets just like 2.1 blinds on this flop, I really have to fold. And unless I have a 6 or a 10, I mean, I guess a 4, but I really can't continue. But this is dumb. If you're going to take this route, he could have just checked here, and then on the river, I would have checked, and he could have checked. And then that's it. But he just decided to create a bluff. I don't understand it. And this player ended up hurting himself a lot in this final table. And I believe my next one's my bust out hand. Four-handed. I took a beat about 3 hands prior. We flattened out a lot. It's been a long time on this final table. I just put this one in here because I want to run the numbers and I want to look up a few things. So I'm going to bring up Jonathan Little's site, pokercoaching.com. And I want to see what we want to do with aces in this specific spot. I know what to do, but I want to make sure because this is one that somebody might say something about. So we're going to go to the tools page. And we're going to go down to the Tournament GTO preflop charts. And our blinds are 15 blinds. Our position is the small blind. Our action is raise first in. Yep. Versus the big blind, we are only supposed to call. We're so short that we're supposed to call. So I limp it. Player checks. Here's the flop. I decide to bet one big blind. This is a board that's super dynamic. If the player has a 9, if he has a 7, I think even if he has an 8, he's going to raise to protect. This player had shown initiative to make creative plays and protect his hands pretty well. I jam it in. He does call me. Runs out like that, and he just flopped 2 pair. Super rare. This is one, though, where if he had 8-5, if he had 9, 9-7, if he had any pair on this board, I think he's going to put me in. I was a thorn in this guy's side, and I absolutely would have just gotten it in super light against the player with half my stack, or a third my stack. So this is where I busted out. But always fun to bust a tournament with aces. Got 4th place. Pretty fucking good, though. Let's see. That ends that one. And now I want to go back to the second. Okay, actually, hang on. Let me do this. Since date, the second. Okay. And I believe, yeah. Okay, there we go. So we're going to do that one. And this one. Oh, that one's going to contain both of the... Okay, that one only contains that. Okay, let's do this one. All right, here we go. So this is a tournament from a few days ago. And here we go. All right. We made another final table here. This is the day's full run, though. We're going to go through these hands. Hey. Can you size up correctly? Okay. Oh, wait a minute. This is backwards. Hang on a sec, guys. Let's see. There we go. Okay. Sorry, I want to do them in order of when I played them. So, how's that? Yeah, there we go. All right. Let's see. Let's move you over here. Okay. All right, so we see a limp out of first and a raise to 4 big blinds. This is very early in this tournament. Not early, not super early, but it's okay. Let's see at what point. So it is early. Oh, it's a smaller stack tournament. So this is probably about 40 minutes into this one, maybe an hour. Let me think about the structure. Yeah, about 40 minutes. Okay. So we call, go to a nice 4-way pot, make a deuce. Goes check, check, player bets. This bet is okay, but look at the stacks. Like, these guys are all super deep, so this bet kind of leverages hard. I do a backdoor flush draws, and an ace is great for me. I decide to go ahead and call. The other player calls, which is interesting. Now I've picked up a gut shot. I decide to check it through. Jack on the river, to me, they're just kind of giving this one to me. So I go ahead and make the big bet on the river for value, trying to make my hand look like a straight with 6-7 or ace-3, which is very possible. 6-7, I think, most likely. I could also have hands like jack-8. I could have sets. I just think this is one where I'm definitely up against a pair that doesn't really want to put any more money in. So like a pair of 6s or 7s. I think we would have seen a raise out of 9s. It could be a hand like a suited 8, something like that. Like, this is the blind. He could have anything. But this bet is pretty well done. And this kind of was a turning point in the hand because I had been pretty dead in this one, and I remember this one finally got me above the starting stack for the first time. And now having 68 blinds, we kind of have a lot more room to maneuver. So I like this hand, and I definitely think I bluffed people off the best hand here. There's no way this deuce was good on its own. But why let somebody with a pair of sixes win? You know, in their pocket pair. Why not put that pressure on them? Speaking of sixes, make a call on the button. 9 comes out. This one I like because I should have the best hand. Like, what's the difference here between a pair of sixes and a pair of tens? The real question is, the way you get to this is, what's the difference between a pair of sixes and a pair of eights? Well, the only real difference is the sixes are more likely to get drawn out on because they can get a 7 or an 8 hit on them. But we do have removal to straight draws, and if we had a 9, this is what we would do. So if nobody has a 9, obviously nobody has an overpair, we can bet here. And there is a scenario where somebody with a pair of 7s, will fold. Player calls. I decide to check because this player is in the big blind, so he can absolutely have a 9 or a 5. The 5 is really bad for me, but he can also have a lot of draws. The river comes off a deuce. Player leads out, and I decide to go ahead and call it because it seems more like a draw than anything. I mean, there's a ton of draws here that miss. There's flush draws. There's straight draws. Even scenarios where the player has a 3, like the ace-3 of spades or whatever, can seem good. But this is that half pot bet that I always talk about, that on the river, you should only use this sizing if you want to get called, honestly, because this does not make for a good bluff. I use it as the bad bluff size, I call it, to get called when I just have a powerhouse. And yeah, I don't know why he decided to bet this river. Maybe he thought I was pure bluffing and I wouldn't call, but if I bet this flop, what should I fold by the river? That's the thing that gets me here. What should I fold on the river? You know what I'm saying? Any value hand that I bet this flop with, what should I fold on the river? I don't see it. Like, if I have a 9, a 3, a 5, any pair, should I really be folding it on the river for a half pot bet? Not really. Like, he just shouldn't have a 9 here. The turn goes check, check, and then the river, he bets half pot. This is one of those ones that doesn't make sense. And everybody was like, nice call, in the chat. But I was like, no, this is one of those ones that if you see it a few hundred times, you start recognizing the true value of your hand. So, I like it. Little pair of deuces. We're super deep. This is a bounty tournament. I believe this is the one we final tabled. Yeah, if it's the bounty, it is that day. Get called by everybody. Flop comes off King Jack 8. Best for my range. So I decide to bet. The nice part about betting properly in a C-bet here is that it leverages this player's stack versus this one and vice versa, because we're betting into 3 players from an early position with a king-high flop. This should be good for us. Like, these 2 players, usually, nobody has ace-king. They didn't 3-bet. Really, the only problem you're worried about is somebody having, like, a random king-jack or flush draws that you're going to have to bet against or bet again. But there's not a lot of reason to not bet here. And you don't have to bet big. If you bet too big here, it just looks like utter bullshit. You just have to bet casually, like, I have ace-king. And you're just betting for value. You're getting your value. And they fold. This is one where we're not even turning our hand into a bluff. We're pure bluffing, because we have almost no showdown value here by the time the board runs out. Pocket sixes, I do like the call here. I think this is another thing that in the bounty tournaments people don't do enough. There's too much 3-betting going on way too early in the tournaments, so you can see how deep I am. I mean, I've got 400,000 at this point, which is super deep. I think the chip average was about 200K. So I'm almost double, or more than double that. Comes off like this. Everybody checks. I pick up the open ender. I decide to go ahead and bet 1/3 pot. Player calls here. There's a lot of draws out there, man. A lot of draws. I decide to bet again. I just basically don't want to get beat by a hand like 8-10 or 10-7 or, something that has better showdown value than me but was on the draw. Or like, a suited 8 of hearts or something like that. Or a suited, I don't think a 9's going to fold necessarily. But there's way more draws out here than there are hands. Like, and the guys in the big blind, I mean, I'm just trying to get him off an 8 or a 7. I don't think there's much reason to go small because we don't want to make it easy. So we have to go for a straight value bet. And players can see 9, 8, 7. So they're going, this guy might have 6, 10 or 10 jack. Having 2 6s in my hand is good because it means I can have 6, 10 or 6, 5. And it's very hard for the other players to, understand that. If he has a 6 in his hand, he's more likely to call. Like if I had 9, 6, I would probably call. 8, 6, I would probably call. But I think it's good to bet sizably here. Sizably but reasonably. Like, don't overbet. Like, because that just looks like you're completely full of crap. But this is a reasonable bet with a straight. And everybody folds. Pocket 6s, man. I said it that day. They were the star of the show. I must have gotten pocket 6s 10 times, and I think I won them all, pretty much. I think there was one where I had to fold on the turn, but for some reason it was just sticky. So I make a min raise, and I get a small 3-bet. This is silly to me, coming out of such an early position. This is that he's isolating, basically. Because now it makes these players have to cold call 5.5, but this raise is not proper if you're really strong here. Like, if you're really strong here, you want to make this about 6.5 or 7, and it seems like a small thing, but it's really not. So I go ahead and call it. Flop comes off. Player now bets 1/3 pot. This is a board that favors me as the original raiser, because I should have a lot of overpairs. He should have a lot of ace kings, ace queens. And also, if you did have an overpair here, sir, you would want to protect against these flush cards. You would not bet 1/3 pot. This is where you have to size up. This is that frequency thing that we talk about. This is a board that the 3-better rarely is improved by. So it is a low frequency that he should be betting. When there is a low frequency that he should be betting, not very often he should be betting higher to protect the hands that should bet now. Jacks, queens, kings, aces, ace 10, all those should be betting. And they should be betting about 2/3 pot or more. So this didn't smell right to me. So he's just going through the motions. So I decided to check raise. I feel like I'm just protecting my hand as it is right now. And I'm putting on max pressure. I don't think he thinks I ever have a flush draw. I think a lot of times this player is going to have ace, king, ace, queen, and when they have the ace of diamonds in their hand, they're going to know that I don't have the suited ace of diamonds, so therefore they're going to be like, shit, I'm up against the set. And, just folds. And the check raise was the way, man. It's a nice hand. It's a really well thought out hand. Pocket 8s. Middle pairs, man. We just go ahead and make the call. This is a different tournament. We're a little bit more shallow now. Goes check, check, check around. Deuce on the turn. It goes check, check again. I do have showdown value. It's very hard for somebody to even call here with a 10. So I just bet, and I do get called, but there's a lot more draws than anything else. I decide to make the 2/3 pot value bet bluff again, and this is what I would do with like 2 pair, king 10, something like that. It works. You just got to bet twice in a lot of situations. Like in a lot of situations, there's a lot of hands that beat me, like 10-9, or a lot of hands like with a 10 or a king, like king queen. There's a lot of hands that can call 1 bet, king jack, but can't call 2 bets, because you can call 1 bet on the turn here with queen 10, but now another overcard hits and it's a straight card and I'm betting big. Like, you can't call a second bet. You need 2 pair minimum here. And honestly, having 2 pair like ace 4 is really not great. Like, you could really be fucked by ace 10. It's kind of bad. So, plus there are some gut shots that I peeled off. The 3-5 of clubs, would just check, 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 make the nuts. So I think it's important to bet twice in a lot of situations. Like we pointed out that my c-bet percentage was about 60% through most tournaments in most situations. But my turn c-bet, like when I've c-bet the flop, how often do I barrel the turn, is close to 100%. Because I truly believe you just have to bet twice a lot, and people fuck up on the turn. People know about c-bets now, but they just don't know, what's going to happen. Let's see. When you bet twice, I mean, it just puts too much pressure on their hands. Let's see. Min raise. Call, call, call. It's a monotone flop. There is a king on it. What would you do with a king here? You'd bet a little bit heftier. So I went a little bit heavy, more than half pot. Basically, I'm saying that I have a king. I might also be saying I have the ace of diamonds. And it's just too much heat. If I bet too small here, though, I'm gonna incentivize hands like the jack of diamonds to call me. And I do not want that. So just a total brick out that we were able to pick off, which I like. Let's see here. Super short stack. I think this is just a fun hand. I decided to jam it. I had just taken a beat. I got aces cracked the hand before for like 80% of my stack. And it goes all in again. And I river a 7 versus ace 8 and ace queen. So this got me right back in the tournament. Super Sun run. It's funny because this is the bounty tournament, so I am a huge target now. Let's see. Pocket sevens. I make a min raise. This is, I believe, the same tournament. Comes off. We go ahead and bet. Get called. Jack on the turn doesn't make a whole lot of sense for this player to have a jack. I mean, sometimes, yeah. I decided to just go ahead and keep betting half pot. It's basically a value play. I think he's just got a lot of gut shot draws here, like a lot of, ace 10s and 10 9s, and 10 9's a good one. Maybe even 8 7 suited calls on this flop because you can pick up a 5, a 9, or one of your suits. But it's just so rare he's going to have a jack, and so rare he's going to have a good king. And when I just bet like fearlessly, it looks like I'm trying to work the money in. And you can see how it was one of those ones where this player reflexively called me. Like, it just really didn't make sense. And, when I keep betting half pot, it's like he's only got 20 blinds left. He knows the money's going in on the river. He knows that. So he now has to fold. Ace 9. See a raise. I do call. Make a 9. Player bets, standard c-bet, I go ahead and call. Ace on the turn's pretty awesome. I check. I decide to check raise now. Player does call. River comes off, 7 of clubs. And it's one of those ones where he was going after my bounty. And you'll see, like, this is how crazy it is. Like, my bounty was like 10 or 12 bucks, so it was one of the bigger ones in the tournament. Like I said, I had taken a beat. But once this happens, once I call this bet, you need to give up, bro. Like, you have pocket 5s. Like, why is he betting here? I have a pot-sized bet left. So when he bets this bet, he really can't fold because my bounty represents an additional 200,000 in chips that he's getting a price on. So it's kind of like when I jam all in, it's costing him 110,000, in which he's getting 4 to 1 on, but you can actually add another. No, I think my bounty was higher than that, so you can probably add about another 250,000 to this pot. So he's getting like 6.5 to 1. If I am ever bluffing, he should probably call. But this is just the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. He just, like, you could have just overbet jammed the flop. Like, if on this flop this comes out and he just bets the pot with his pocket 5s, if he's not going to fold anyway, just bet pot. And then I have to fold. I really can't do much. I mean, with second pair, me personally, I'm probably going to go with it. Like, while this hand was playing, I was sitting there going, you know what? I think I'm just committed here, and we're going to just call. And then, of course, the turn comes off, and it's brilliant. But it's an interesting thing, and it just shows you how creative players get at doing things wrong. So we get called. I make the queen. I decide to go ahead and bet. Get called. We decide to go ahead and bet again. And you can see I'm over half pot here. I'm trying to work these chips in. Player calls. River comes off. There's no reason to bet, because if I am good, I will scare him away. If I am not good, he will not fold. But if he is not good and he has very little, he will bluff me. And that's what we want. He does bet. He puts me all in for a pot-sized bet. So we snap call. In-game, it was a snap call. And, yeah. We want to get him to bluff. This is a great example of allowing your opponent to bluff. And here's the thing. It looks like I was going bet, bet, bet. Like, check this out. I have 27 blinds, right? I bet small. There's 11 in the pot. I bet again. Now there's a little bit better than a pot-sized bet. And I just didn't pull the trigger. That's all I had to do was not pull the trigger on a bluff. If I didn't have the queen, I would have jammed here with ace-king. But when I check, woohoo, that got me right back in the game. I go ahead and raise. Get called twice. Make the queen again. Goes check, check. I do decide to bet. This is fine. It could be a little smaller. This is probably a mistake. It could probably be like 2 1/4. But this player was giving a lot of action, so it worked out. But usually I think that would lose me the opponent. He checks. I decide to bet 2/3 pot now, trying to get my value. Player calls. Then he leads out for my stack on the river. Again, are you ever doing this with a flush? Are you ever doing this with a straight? Not really. At what point do you have a full house? Unless he has a random hand, like the ace-8 of clubs, and I have the ace of clubs, remember. There's really nothing going on here. Like, he could have, I guess he could have like 6-8, but I don't think I could fold. It's one of those things where if I folded, I would kind of be middle of the pack. But this player was doing a lot of weird shit, so I did snap it off in game, and yeah. I don't know why he bet. He had showdown value, and typically when players have showdown value, they will check. So when he bets, it kind of just gives up the ghost that he's not super strong. But he was trying to put pressure on me. I don't know what he thought I had. Honestly, I don't think he thought about what I had. So, interesting. But now we got chips. Ace-king. Raise and a call. I do decide to just call this one because of this player's monstrous stack. Look at this, 328 blinds. Let's look at that in chips. I mean, it's 11 million chips. Like I think we're down. This might be the final table. This might be the final table. Yeah, it is. So the rest of these hands, I believe, are on the final table there. I was playing 2 tables at once, or there was 2 tournaments going on at once, but I believe the rest of these are from the final table. So I decided to just call it because this is ridiculous. You know, this guy having this many chips. Make the king. I decided to check it around just because there's really no value in betting here. I was expecting a c-bet. Didn't get one, so I bet the turn, get called. Villain folds. This is just super bad. I decide to blocker bet. The player does just call. This is for showdown purposes where sometimes we're up against a hand like... I mean, there's not a lot here but that I can beat. But sometimes the player has, I mean, an ace-king occasionally. Sometimes they have an ace-queen. And if they bet the river, man, I have to fold. And it's such a good bluffing spot if you have ace-queen. He could have the ace-queen of spades, right? Have called the turn and then turned his hand into a bluff on the river. So I just blocker bet this. And player ran out queen 10 for running 2 pairs. So unlucky, but I think the blocker bet was an important tool to use there. I definitely like the showdown. And it makes sense that I didn't get a bet on the flop, right? But I didn't want to 3-bet. I thought about it later, and if I'm just calling, I should probably lead. You know what I mean? Min raised. I call it with the 6s. Again, the 6s, the star of the show yesterday. Check, player bets micro. Like I said, you have to be able to bet properly. So I float it. This player calls it as well. 3 on the turn's really good for my purposes because I'm going to have a lot of sets that are now full houses. I just bet 2/3 pot right here. This is pretty fearless, and it gets 2 folds. There's really nothing going on here for showdown value. So My feeling is I bet my hand to protect it, but in all honesty, I guess technically I'm turning it into a bluff. But I think I've had the best hand. I think we were just up against middling flush draws. A6 suited. Get called. Again, no real point in betting here. Like, if I'm good, I'm not going to get called. If I'm beat, I'm not going to get folds. So I just checked. Turn comes off a king. I basically am betting here because I have to bet something, and also there could be a lot of king tens, king queens, king jacks, flush draws that'll give me some action. And I bet it's small because I don't expect there to be much out here. I need a clean run out. 10's okay. It's not great. I decided to go ahead and bet. This is semi-blocker bet, but it is value bet. Into two players, a third pot bet can be value because you're trying to get called a little wider. Sometimes you get called twice. But they both folded. And this is just one where I think that the turn bet was so important. There was 8 blinds in this pot, and by finding the right bet, we got called twice. So doubled the size of the pot and a little more by making the correct bet. So I really like it. I think it was great. 10-4 is a fun one. Look at this. I literally, I'm getting 7.5 to 1, which is 12% equity. At 11 to 1, you can play, I always say this, you can play every hand in the deck. At 7.5 to 1, with my skill edge, I think I can play most hands in the deck at this point. This is a different tournament. This isn't the final table. I decided to go ahead and take this one, and I'm kind of really happy I did. It comes off 5-9-6, usually good for the big blind. I decided to go ahead and check around. I decided to bet the turn. Doesn't have to be huge, but it can't be too small, so third pot. We get the fold. And it's a nice pickup. It's a nice pickup. When nobody improves, man, the blind is the guy who's got it. You know, so it's a nice little lead out on the turn. It's basically floating pre-flop when you have a hand that shitty. I raise, get called. I decide to go check. Turn comes off a jack. This hand was very interesting to me. Now, this is one of those ones where normally I would c-bet, but not all the time, and this is one of the not all the times. But you can see my hand fares well versus the deck. We're about, 2/3 of the time going to win. Goes check. Player is in the blind, so it's kind of whatever. He bets big now, and I was really, after this hand was over, I gave this guy a lot of praise. This is pretty smart because it looks like utter bullshit. You know what it looks like? It looks like a jack. But you have to be a good player to know that. I don't know if this player is a good player or if he just wanted to bet big. But if I call this, there's not a lot of rivers I can fold. Not a lot. So I call, and he bets 2/3 pot. I learned something from this player. He used a cash game technique. So if you were to raise ace-king in a cash game, and the flop comes off like ace-7 deuce, if you bet 3/4 pot and get called, you are very often in the, or let's say you 3-bet it pre-flop, like somebody raised and you 3-bet with the ace-king, and it comes off ace-7 deuce, and you bet it huge. You bet like 3/4 or more. When you get called, you are very often sharing the ace. So you've set the standard that the player has to have something because you've narrowed the ranges to such a point. The player has to have something to continue. And when you've now guaranteed that he continues, you can now go ape shit and bet the ace-king confidently and watch the player roll over ace-queen, ace-jack, because they think they're just picking you off and you're trying to go crazy with kings. It's similarly what happened here. He bet a big bet on the turn with an absolute fucking monster. Let me show you. Where is it? Where is it? Why can't I? Oh, there it is. He led this turn for 2/3 pot. Now, either this is extremely amateur or it's extremely advanced. I learned something, and I implemented doing this the very next time I played tournaments. I did it yesterday. This created something, because if I can't call this, I can call like a third pot bet. I can call a smaller bet here with a lot of hands. But if I call this, I can't fold much on the river, because I have to believe that he's full of crap. And then he bets this huge bet, and he got me to fall for it, and kudos to this player. He really found a great way to get paid when the player continues. If he bets a third pot bet and then bets the river, first of all, the bet's not going to be as big because the pot's going to be smaller. And second of all, it allows me to get away from hands like Jack-9. Ace-Jack is probably never a fold. You can see on the turn here, versus the deck, I'm 74%. And even on the river, I should be 76%, because you have to have an 8 or a queen or a 9-10. There's just not a lot of combos. But that big bet, man, it got me so good. And I learned something. Whether this player had this intention or not, and in all honesty, I don't know if he did. He did a lot of strange things. He was from, I believe, Kazakhstan, which is a few years behind us as far as poker development in the U.S. So I think it was a mistake that I'm able to glean something from. And the very next session playing tournaments, which was yesterday, I started doing this. I would have smashed flops where I was out of position and stuff like that, and flops gone check, check, and I just started betting big on the turn. I was fucking amazed how well it worked. And one of them, I was like, I wonder how big I can bet and still get called. And I took it to the max. I went like 95% pot. And I think I had the nut straight. And I just got snap called by second pair. And it was insane. So it was I learned from it, and I want to give this player his due, because it really worked well on me. And I think it's important to recognize what you fall for. Even if he didn't have this intent, I fell for it. And if I'm going to fall for it, other people will too. So it was a cash game move that evolved a little bit, and I integrated it immediately. So, it's just a good example of learning from your mistakes. But there's nothing GTO there that I did incorrectly, but it's one of those if-when. If this player calls this 4 big blinds, when will he fold on rip? Never. I go for the 3-bet all-in jam here. I think this is just one of those funny ones. Oh, yeah, it is. I get called twice. Make a jack up against ace-queen and ace-10. This got me back into the tournament. I just have this highlighted because I'm going to put it in a video. I think that's the end of it. I ended up in 8th place in this tournament, or 7th place. I forget. I think it was 8th place, honestly. But it was a good showing overall. It just kind of meh on the final table. I think I ended up ace-king going out. Top pair. I got 2 paired on the turn, I think. But yeah, so it was a good run. We'll be going for about an hour now. I'm going to call it here. I think I'm going to be playing cash games today. Give me one. Let me look at one. Do I want to end it now? Give me 1 second here. Yep, I do. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end it. Please stick around for the host. There's nobody here. I'm not going to raid out. All right, I'll see you guys later. Enjoy this on YouTube. I'm sure that's where everybody will see it. Have fun with it. I'll probably be around playing cash games today later. Check out the YouTube and the TikTok and the Instagram. There's new content on all of those. And I'll see you guys later. Have a great night.